All right, guys, we're talking Justin Fields tonight. As always, let's get to some trades to get a little baseline here. So, are you going Justin Fields or an early 23 first in Superflex?
Fields.
Yeah, you gotta go Fields.
One QB, are you going Justin Fields or a late 23 first?
Fields.
So I know not everyone has our roster review, so some people are going to think I'm lying, but I had been advocating paying a late first for Justin Fields for several weeks prior to his 50-point explosion. So I'm going to ask you to just pull those clips out and share them with everyone. Definitely Fields for me.
Justin Fields and J.K. Dobbins or Damian Pierce and a projected late 23 first? Superflex.
Fields and Dobbins.
Superflex. Give me the QB, the guy that's a QB1. Not to get all maniacal, but he did put up, 3 straight weeks over 30 points. That's a pretty good stretch right there, man, with literally Darnell Mooney and no one else for most of that.
Yeah. We'll get into some more trades throughout this show. Scott, go ahead. Start us off. What are your thoughts on Fields, man?
I mean, people are going to probably go, wow, you guys changed your tune quickly on Fields, or at least I have. Part of it is that's what the Dynasty game is now, right? Like when you have information of things that happened quickly in the last 3 or 4 weeks, you have to kind of say, all right, we have to adjust to where the market is first. And then usually what I do is I wait to see where the market is, and then I'll bet whatever side the market's on that I prefer. Or if we're projecting what we think's the market's going to do, then we'll kind of hedge our bets beforehand. So long-winded, like we're constantly going back and forth. Hey, Fields is a sell, Fields is a buy. Here's the reason why. And then once you start to have a platform that people listen to, like you start to see this stuff kind of go out there in the space a little bit more. And so the last day has been a whirlwind, like Fields is by far the QB1 this week, leads the league in rushing at quarterback. I'm obviously big, just from if anyone's listened to Destination Dynasty, I'm big on looking at quarterback efficiency. He's still not really that good, but I think we're to the point with Fields where he doesn't need to be that good. Like you don't have to compare him to, you don't look at him and say, okay, I need him to be comparable to like Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow or anything like that. He just needs to be good enough to keep his job, right? Good enough for the team to go, all right, this is a guy that we're going to consider giving a second contract to. We're going to consider building around. We're going to start catering the offense more and more towards him versus just he's a guy out there that can run. The spell's going to wear off and he's just going to be exposed. Like you hope it goes the other way. And I think that's what we're starting to see happening. So look, the last 5 weeks, he kind of stacks up inside the top 15, top 10. So it's like the top half of the league, which I'll take that. You have Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, those guys are in the top 6 or 7, even from a passing efficiency standpoint. And then you add in the fact that they can run for 1,000 yards. Okay, that's how you create a top 3 quarterback. But then Fields is like just a little bit behind him. So you have to almost say like he might be a little bit ahead of where Jalen Hurts was last year. Now, do the Bears take the same step that the Eagles did? Remains to be seen, but I think you've seen enough to where, okay, he's passable enough to where they're going to give him probably at least one more year to say, this is our dude. Right. Like we're going to try to get enough around him and build the infrastructure around him to where he can continue. Because I think we all agree if he starts another 50 games in the NFL, he has a really good chance of at least half of those being
he's going to score a lot of fantasy
QB1 or higher games. You know what I mean? Like, and he's got a couple games in there where he's going to be top 3 or better. It's like you're going to get the fantasy production. That was always the argument with Jalen Hurts this year. Like if you want to make the big bet on Hurts before this year and they thrive and they end up going, 15-2 or 16-1 or something like that, he's going to get extended. And then all of a sudden he's literally Lamar Jackson overnight. All he needed was that security. And I think Fields is going down that same road. So I think you have to buy into the fact that I think his efficiency numbers are going to be enough to where the team's going to say, all right, we can get by with this guy. He's not just an athlete out there playing quarterback. Like we can start building a passing game around him. So I got to buy in. I mean, the thing you have to wrap your head around, and I know I'm being a little long-winded, but is how high do you move him, right? Like you start getting into this debate of like, who do you prefer, Justin Fields or Kyler Murray? Who do you prefer, Justin Fields or Deshaun Watson? I mean, it's a legit debate now, but I think even more so if you were holding Field shares, you can go with Fields as an asset in a trade and go and any player in the league is on the table now. Whereas before, if you just have like Matt Stafford and you go try to get Patrick Mahomes, they're like, yeah, you got to pay the price for Mahomes. But like Matt Stafford doesn't even count in the deal. They don't even want him. Like they may take him, but you're not looking at that as like one of the key pieces.
Right.
That was Fields a couple weeks ago. Now it's like, all right, I'm legitimately interested in Fields plus a first for one of those guys. Like it at least gets the discussion going. And anytime you can be sniffing in the elite quarterback, range, I think that's where you always want to be.
Well, yeah, let's get into it right now. Shane, are you going Kyler Murray or Justin Fields and a late 23 first?
Ooh, I think I got to go Fields in the pick, man. Again, like Scott says, I know it's reactionary, but look, this is the game we play. It's Dynasty Football. We are reactionary. Traded for Chase Claypool. Like that was a present to him, and they did that. They were like, you did good. We're going to give you a player. I can only imagine what they're going to do in the offseason when they have roughly $400 million in available cap space. Like they can trade for anyone. They can absorb any contract. So even if the free agency wide receiver pool isn't great, they can still acquire a wide receiver from someone. So don't know if this sounds right, but I trust the Chicago Bears coaching staff more than I do Cliff Kingsbury because they at least showed that they can adjust. They had 3 bad weeks with them and they had 4 bad weeks. And they said, all right, this isn't working. Let's try something else. Whereas Cliff Kingsbury has done the same thing for, I don't even know how long Kyler's been there now.
Scott, which side are you going on that one? You going Fields in a 23 first late or Kyler?
I think it really depends on my market in my league. What is the late first get me? Some leagues, I think people look at the late first and they're like, yeah, I'm not going to really trade you anything of value for that. Or you can't really get those deals where you package like 2 picks for an elite asset, so I can still see where you'd take the Kyler side, but I also think Kyler, and I know Shane agrees with this, I think Kyler and Justin Herbert both are essentially a lot better than what they're playing this year. They're stuck in just miserable offensive situations where like they're basically just being misused in terms of the type of offense that they're running. And so I think you're kind of betting if you're buying in on those guys as you're hoping for a correction in 2023. If not, like you can argue Fields is going to be better than both of those guys if things just stay as they are for another year. So you kind of hope with, especially Arizona, that it keeps getting bad so that it explodes and then you get a reset button next year. Might not happen with Herbert, but his is just as bad as Kyler's. I don't want to make this a Herbert show, but I keep hearing about how Keenan Allen, when he comes back, it's going to make Herbert's ADOT go up. And I'm not really. If anything, it's just going to be another guy like Austin Eckler where he's going to throw it, 4 yards attempt to Keenan Allen. So I think both of them need a different structure. That's the case. Like Fields is already bottomed out, right? Like we already look at his situation and we're like, it can't get much worse. And look what he's doing. You add in another weapon. Maybe they use a first-round pick next year on a receiver, or more importantly, they trade for a receiver like a A.J. Brown or a Stephon Diggs, a team that doesn't want to pay the receiver. T. Higgins, maybe? Yeah. You do something like that, and now you're going like, I don't even care about his offensive line. Put more weapons in this system, Fields will smash. So I think he's just one of those guys now where you want to use him. If you want to go get Herbert, or you want to go get Kyler, like he's a legit piece. You can go do it. But I think I'd take the package in that case.
I got another idea too. But in the meantime, if you're enjoying this content, if you wouldn't mind hitting that little thumbs up, give us a like. We'd appreciate it. Helps our little channel out here. So Shane, when Breece Hall reached the number 1 overall RB in Dynasty that 1 week, you did some savvy moves, trading him straight up for Deshaun Watson. Guys, what do you think about Travis Etienne or Justin Fields straight up in Superflex? Who are you going?
Fields.
So I think I could still get more back with Fields. I think there's enough of still a negative connotation around him. He had a bad start to his rookie year last year, and he had a bad start to this season. The problem is if you're going to do it, you're going to have to do it this week because he's got 2 games coming up that are just cakewalks, and he might drop another 40, 30-point weeks on you, and you're never going to be able to trade ETN straight up for him. So if given the choice, I would do it right now. I would take Fields.
What about tiering up to Fields? So you said, Scott, in that Stafford to Herbert range, like Stafford doesn't even count. What QBs under Fields would have some weight when you're trying to move up to Fields? Mac Jones and an early 23 first, or Justin Fields?
I mean, you already asked the early first for Fields trade up, and we took Fields. I think the difficulty of that is if you just look at where you would put your quarterback tiers, and assuming you have Fields at the bottom of the tier 2 range, right? So you're talking about the QB 3 through 8, 9, 10. Like he's probably near the bottom of that, but he's still in the top 10. And I think the issue is once you get down outside of the top 12, 13, you have that group where it's like Tua and Trevor Lawrence are probably like right there in the top 12 or so. After that, it's just a major drop off. You know, it's to the point where everybody else below that is an acquired taste or I don't really want that guy anymore. I want to get Shane's take on this. Like, it feels really hard to come up with a trade where I offer you Kirk Cousins plus for Justin Fields, and we both like Kirk Cousins. But I think the price that the other person, because we know Kirk Cousins' market has been, poo-poo forever.
Always.
So when you go to the person with Fields and you're like, hey, man, I'm willing to give you Kirk Cousins plus, they kind of look at Kirk Cousins like, yeah, I don't really want him. So you end up having to pay basically Fields' price alone, and you have to throw in Kirk Cousins. And as soon as it starts to become Kirk Cousins in an early first, then Shane and I are like, all right, give me the package. You know what I mean? So it feels like it's really hard to tier up because I heard a couple people say, yeah, if I'm tiering up from Fields, I have to give a quarterback back. And I go, well, why? And he goes, well, a lot of people want a quarterback if they're trading one away. Yet the names you're mentioning, Mac Jones, Matt Stafford, like those guys are just placeholders. I'll take them, but I'm not taking any value back if I'm, giving Fields up in one of those.
So if you want to tier up, it's going to, obviously you're limited by what you have, but I could see making a move like, and this might be really bad process, but if you just wanted to make the bet on Fields and go, he's the next Jalen Hurts, Kenny Pickett in the first. Because if I have Justin Fields, then what I'm going to tell myself, and if I'm trading him for that package, is, well, I get a first, and I'm buying Kenny Pickett at a nadir. Is that when it's low? Whatever the low point is. No,
I don't know if that gets done though, Shane. Like I'm thinking Trey Lance and a 104 for Justin Fields. Are you doing that?
Trey Lance is a myth right now.
But Trey Lance is just by default. He's like QB 12 because you get in a startup. This is going to happen. As much as I go, I'm not sure if I wanted Trey Lance after he got hurt. You get into a startup and it's February. You really think people aren't taking Trey Lance in the top 12? They're not taking Kirk Cousins.
I've got two other strong QBs. I'll take Lance in the pick there. But
exactly. But that's the thing. You probably have to go Trey Lance, Trevor Lawrence, and a first to get up to Fields if you want enough to move the Fields owner off of him. And as soon as you're in that range, it's like, man, I could have gotten Fields for Trey Lance straight up a couple weeks ago. And now I'm adding a first. And I'm already sitting on a dead asset that I could have traded away 6 weeks ago when he got hurt. That just feels like bad process if you're adding like a first to Lawrence or Lance to get Fields, but maybe not. What's your thought, Shane?
Well, so look, I always say I'm fine. It's fine being a relative term, as my therapist has told me, but I'm fine paying up for a quarterback, right? I mean, and it's what I did to get back in on Hurts after, in the leagues that I did trade him last year, and then I regretted it and was like, let me get him back after they got AJ Brown. The way I look at it is, am I going to pay more now or am I going to pay more in a year, right? Is he going to be attainable in a year, right? If he carries on to this current trajectory, no, he won't be available. And I obviously don't think he'll be the QB1, but I think he's much closer to the QB7 than he is to QB14. So this might be the last time that I can actually get him at a reasonable price, which still might feel like an overpay, which might be Trey Lance in the 104. It might be Trevor Lawrence and a 24 first. That might feel like, wow, I'm giving up a lot. But just seeing the high end, what he has been able to do, like I have visions of Jalen Hurts in my head. And obviously they're different players, but I'm talking about like the way that they've progressed.
What about Justin Fields and 2 23 first, one projected early, one mid, or Lamar Jackson?
I think it's the package. You're getting 2 firsts in Fields. It's a big bet,
you
but
look like you're in pain, Shane.
Because I love Lamar Jackson. He's my original, like he was my original, like when people were doubting him, I'm like, you guys are stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. And that was my exact line. I think I wrote that down somewhere. It's quoted. I think you got to take the package. Like, even if you didn't believe in Justin Fields, you take that package and then flip Justin Fields for Kenny Pickett and a first, Trevor Lawrence and a first. And you're like, you know what? I got 3 firsts and a young quarterback. I'm going to be okay.
And you got all sorts of flexibility. Yeah. I mean, if Fields ends up being a decent quarterback, you can do so much with those 2 firsts. It's not like we're on the clock making those picks every single time. You can just buy a player or you can trade back. That's for you, TikTok.
I'll say this because I think we're in the dynasty game that's just like immediate reactions. Lamar is on a bye next week, and Fields has Detroit and Atlanta back to back. So you have a window to where a week from now, after week 10, we could be sitting here and saying Fields or Lamar. Then you just netted 2 firsts. So you may be able to take that Fields in one of those firsts and go buy Justin Herbert. And all of a sudden, your pivot looks even better. So that's one of those where it's like it feels really hard to trade one of those cornerstone quarterbacks when you already have them. But if you're betting on a guy that can stay in that tier and you're getting the extra assets, like I think it's really, really hard to turn that down because there's just, like you said, Clay, there's so much more you can do with those picks. And then if Fields hits, if he becomes anything close to Lamar, it's going to be hard for that team to lose that trade in any capacity, even if you waste those firsts.